Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
We're all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thanks for being in class. Thank you for being in class with us today. Rich Scheben's with us in Montana. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vince. How are you doing today? No, I didn't mention cars.
I heard you say cars just now. I heard you say the word C-A-R-S. I know you did. You said I didn't mention cars, right?
Well, you know what? Everything is so fake and phony today. Everything's such an illusion. Everything is propaganda, hoaxes, false flags, and lies that pretty much we don't even have a rule of law anymore. So you can say I said anything because nothing matters.
Absolutely true. But since you mentioned cars, General Motors, and this is a big deal. General Motors, the CEO, Mary Barra, has announced that what they were going to do is, try to change California's emission controls rules because they're a little stricter, more strict than any other state. And GM was going to go against that and try to get other automobile makers to do the same thing, to fight California. Well, just like everybody else, they reversed their position. So she made the announcement that she is going to support Jumpin' Joe in his efforts to move electric vehicles onto the roads. So they are withdrawing their fight against California's EPA or California's pollution controls for automobiles, stricter controls, and they're going to move and spend more money on electric vehicle development. Now, for some strange reason, there are people who think that electric vehicles are the panacea, the solution, the silver bullet of air pollution for automobiles. They've lost their minds. And so, to drive greater and greater and greater fuel economy can only be done three ways. One, you reduce friction. Two, you use a fuel that is more efficient. And three, you reduce the weight. That's how you do it. Well, we've already seen what's happened. We've lost bumpers on cars. Now they have these plastic skins that they call bumpers. So they've reduced the weight there. They've taken cast iron out of the engines and they've replaced it with plastic and aluminum. No kidding. Seriously. And they've added transmissions that are so complex that we can't even fix them. So they have 6, 7, 8, 9 speed automatic transmissions that are unrepairable, at least economically unrepairable. So we have made automobiles disposable. And that's what's happening to us. Now, when we go to electric, what'll happen is you won't have any electric trucks because there's just no way that we have the density of energy in the batteries, to move heavy loads in pickup trucks. So we're going to have all these little tiny sewing machine type cars running around, and very few people will have an actual truck to do work. So the do-it-yourselfer that wants to build that deck on the back of their house or expand it or re-roof and get some shingles, and that's going to be done by the professionals. You won't be able to do that unless you can find a truck somewhere. That's where we're headed. By the way, no calls today, right? So that's my comment, Rich Scheben, about cars, since you mentioned cars. It's crazy. And the governor of California announced that there will be no new gas or diesel powered cars for sale in California by 2035. That's pretty soon, right? That's 15 years. And I don't know who the government thinks they are, but they say things like, you will reduce, or you will improve miles per gallon by 5% a year. Well, it's nice that they say that, and it's a lofty goal, but sometimes physics gets in the way of these lofty goals. And air pollution and fuel economy are directly opposed to each other. Now, I know for a fact that no one who races cars says, you know what, I think we can go faster if we put another piece of air pollution equipment on this race car engine. Nobody does that because it is counter to efficiency. All of these air pollution devices, these add-on things like the air injection pumps, and et cetera, exhaust gas recirculation, all of those things reduce miles per gallon. Now think about this. We know that wearing a mask can cause hypoxia. Why? Because you breathe out and some of the air that you breathe out is trapped in the mask and then you get to rebreathe it. So you get hypoxia from breathing your exhaled air. Well, that's exactly what all the automobile manufacturers have been doing for a couple decades. Taking exhaust gas and sending it right into the intake of the engine. So let's reburn the exhaust. And it reduces miles per gallon. So I guess what I'm saying, Rich, is we're being lied to, we're being cheated, and it's
brainwashed. Let me fill in the blank.
Yes. Brainwashed. And people believe this nonsense. They believe that electric cars are going to be the salvation. They've lost their minds. Especially when your neighbor comes over and he's got his baseball bat in his hand and he says, hey, look, you know, because you're charging your electric car, I can't watch the game. Because they shut my electricity off. Because you're charging your car. That's
well, just remember something, Vince. When we had major population expansion in the U.S. and the world, it was because of energy. Okay, there was a lot of reasons, but it couldn't have happened without the increase in energy production. So what are they doing? They're funneling less energy under the guise of carbon footprints and global warming. So what's going to happen is going to be less commerce, less opportunity, less prosperity, because they want to depopulate the world, not just the country. Now, you mentioned Governor Newsom, and why should we believe his brainwashing when we have top officials from the California Medical Association at his dinners without masks? I mean, here we have his children attending in-person classes while other kids suffer struggling with remote learning. He just created an order to exempt Hollywood movie studios from COVID lockdown restrictions because we got to keep the propaganda, hoaxes, false flags, and lies and gaslighting going. You know, it really is a brainwashing technique, and I'm going to talk quite a bit about that today, along with talking about the election and voter fraud, which I have a lot of information. I want to start with COVID, and of course I want to start with some articles talking about the consequences of political correctness and how we've lived with the inaction towards political correctness for so many decades that we're reaping the consequences of it now, of all this inaction. And if it's okay with you, Vince, I'd like to start. So here we go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And Vince, I appreciate you giving me so much time on your show and allowing me to exercise my First Amendment right, because our rights, whether it be the Constitution, Bill of Rights, is all in jeopardy right now. So what I want to start with, folks, I'm sorry, Vince, go ahead.
Well, you know, you're absolutely right on. Everything that you've been saying is right on the money. The only thing that I can't figure out is why the shooting hasn't started yet. And I have a feeling it's because, and I've predicted this, that violence will escalate. But I believe it's because we're in limbo between the two selected people, and for our voting amusement. But I think it's still going to happen. I really do. But please continue.
Well, thank you, Vince. So what I'm going to talk about first, I'm going to talk about the COVID-19 and some articles, and I want to talk about something and start with something that's it's going to make steam roll out of your ears. And I'm going to preface this. Do you remember all the years I've been on the air, people, talking about Marx, Zelensky, Cloward and Piven, the Frankfurt School, the Communist Manifesto, and I've mentioned excerpts, and I've connected the dots on how they're using those strategies and techniques to control the people. Basically, I'm going to talk today as quickly as I can, but it's going to take me a while to talk about the Biterman Report of 1956. Basically, it's the slave master Democrat template playbook, one of them. And I mentioned earlier in the show just a few moments ago about brainwashing. So I'm going to talk about the Biterman, Biderman report. Now, if you look it up, and I know this audience is aware of that, you might get on different search engines different results because of the censorship, surveillance, the tracking, the tracing, the mind control, keeping people dumbed down, distracted, divided. So it's getting, when you don't go on Google search, you probably have a better chance, like DuckDuckGo or StartPage or Brave, or there's other search engines that will give you better results, especially regarding truth. I mean, it's just that simple. So anyway, the Biterman Report was done by a Dr. Alfred Biterman, and it basically, if you had to create a title for it, it would be called the Communist Coercive Methods for Eliciting Individual Compliance. Now, this was presented at a meeting of neurology and psychology back at New York Academy in 1956. And this is a report to make it, to go down to the brass tacks here. This is a report based on communist brainwashing techniques used by the Chinese and North Koreans on captured American pilots and other military members to get false confessions and propaganda statements supporting the communists. Now, you're saying, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, I'm going to tell you. The Biterman Report, and this should get you very, very upset, America, okay? And I'm just trying to get my computer to work a little faster here. So basically, I'm going to go through the chart, and I'm going to compare this to COVID-19, okay? It's on the internet. You just got to look it up. You might have to dig a little bit, especially since I'm mentioning this. They might hide it a few layers down. But basically, it's communist coercive methods for eliciting individual compliance. And after the break, I'm going to get into more details and specificity. It's the Biterman Report of 1956, and I'm going to talk about chart of coercion. And this is going to make you red in the face, and steam will come out of your ears.
Rich Scheben's with us, and he's talking about conditioning us. Please continue.
So I'm going to talk about the Biterman Report in specificity and detail here, folks. Now I'm going to start with the chart of coercion as it's listed on paper. The first part, there's like 7 different strategies, if you will. The first one is called isolation. Sound familiar? And it's defined on the chart of coercion by Biterman as depriving individual or social support or of social support of his or her ability to resist, making an individual dependent on the captor. An individual develops an intense concern with self. Okay, now let's go over to COVID-19 or some kind of forced virus or health concern. Okay? Isolation. Think about what I'm saying here, folks. It's so plain. 1, social distancing. Next, isolation from loved ones, massive job loss. Next, solitary confinement, semi-isolation, and quarantines and containment camps. Is there a light going on? I promise you it will by the time I'm done with this chart. Okay, the next chart of coercion from the Biterman Report is monopolization of perception. Monopolization, of perception. I need new glasses. Okay, first of all, it talks about fixing all attention upon immediate predicament. Frustrates all actions not consistent with compliance. Eliminates stimuli competing with those controlled by the captor. Now, let's move over to the COVID-19 manufactured perception of monopolization. Restrict movement. Create monotony. I can't even pronounce it. Monotony. Boredom. Okay? Preventing gatherings, meetings, concerts, sports. Dominating all meeting. 24/7. Censor information. Are you thinking what I'm thinking now? Okay, the brainwashing, you see? Monotony, that's the word, that's the pronunciation I was having a difficult time with. Okay, I'm going to go to the next chart on the coercion. Induced debility and exhaustion. Weakens mental and physical ability to resist. People become worn out by tension and fear. Sounding familiar? Let's go to the COVID-19 side. Induced debility. Forced to stay at home. All media is negative. Not permitted to exercise or socialize. You getting it? Next is threats. Have we been seeing threats lately against lawyers and judges and poll watchers, etc.? And underneath threats on the Biterman Report of coercion, it's cultivate anxiety and despair. Gives demands and consequences for non-compliance. Now let's go to threats and intimidation on the COVID-19 side. Threaten to close business, levy fines, predict extension of quarantine, force vaccines, create containment camps. Folks, we've been had. Next, on the Biterman Report side of coercion, titled Occasional Indulgencies, provides motivation for compliance. Just like these freedom passes now they're giving out in the UK, and I'm going to talk about that article depending on how much time I have, which I probably won't have a lot of time. But it provides motivation for compliance, hinders adjustment to deprivation, creates hope for change, reduces resistance. This keeps people unsure of what is happening. They open the floodgates, they close them. They open them, they close them. Basically conditioning you to what they say goes. Now let's talk about occasional indulgencies on the COVID-19 side. Allows reopening of some stores and services. Lets restaurants open, but only at a certain capacity. Increasing more people allowed to gather. Follow concessions with tougher rules. See where this is going, folks? Are you getting ticked off yet? You should be. You're a guinea pig. You're an experiment. We'll be right back after this break.
Rich, Scheben, you've been talking about the 1956 report. Can you give us the search engine spellings so that those in class who want to do more research can find this?
Yeah, I think everybody should look at this. It's called if you search, go to DuckDuckGo. It's also, part of it's under Google too, but the powers that be are going to eliminate these truths because they don't want to see how you've been brainwashed and manipulated. Go to the Biterman Report, BIDERMAN Report of 1956, and you will see this. So I'm going to finish this. There's only 3 more left to go, and then I'm going to tie all this in I want to mention some COVID-19 articles. I'm going to tie all this in today with everything that's going on, the brainwashing and how people are falling for this and political correctness and all this. So I have a lot to do. So I'm just going to go for it, Vince, if you don't mind, please. The next category is right. Demonstrate omnipotence. Now, basically what that means is creating unlimited power, a certain authority or force, even if it's fake or not. So think about this. It demonstrates under the Biterman Report regarding coercion. So the categories or the subcategories are demonstrates futility of resistance, shows who's in charge, and provides positive motivation for compliance. Now let's go to the COVID-19 side. Shut down entire economies across the world. Create money out of nowhere, forced dependency. Develop total surveillance with nanochips and 5G. The next category is degradation. And this is under the Biterman portion. Makes resistance seem worse than compliance. Creates feelings of helplessness. Creates fear of freedom dependence on captors. Is this sounding familiar, ladies and gentlemen? Now, under the COVID-19 side, humiliation or degradation techniques. Shame people who refuse to use masks and don't distance. Make people stand on circles between lines. Make people stand outside and wait in queues. Sanitation stations in every shop. Is it sounding familiar? Okay, here's the last category under coercion for the Biterman Report. Enforcing trivial demands. Develop habit of compliance. Demands made are illogical and contradictory. Rules on compliance may change and reinforces who is in control. Now let's go to the COVID-19 side. Enforcing trivial demands. Family members must stand apart. Masks in home and even when having sex. Random limits allowed to be together. Sanitizers to be used over and over in a day. Now, let's go to some articles here, and I want you to think about the Biterman Report and how it ties into the behavior modification of the COVID-19 side that we just discussed. Governor of Hawaii becomes a tyrannical monarch, threatens $5,000 fines and jail time for people who don't wear masks. Next article. World News Britons who test negative for COVID-19 twice in a week are set to receive a freedom pass. Folks, I know I say this disclaimer every show, that some people might think I'm making up these articles, but I promise you I am not. I try to research and read as much as I can and prepare. I have 16 hours of stuff to prepare for 2 hours of show, and I shortcut everything, but I promise you every article, everything is real. It's all published in the public domain. Now, next article. Pandemic is over. Former Pfizer chief science officer says second wave is faked and the false positive COVID tests are fake. And his name, if I remember, is Dr. Mike Yeadon. And he has great credentials. He is just not bought and paid for. So basically the people, the heroes, the people who have the credentials, their information is being purged. It's being edited. It's being changed for the purpose of the behavior modifications that I mentioned in the Biterman Report. Next article. Nevada government orders indoor masks mandate, limits private gatherings ahead of Thanksgiving. Starting to connect the dots, folks? Next. So, Editor's Choice leftists suggest re-education camps and firing squads and banning talk radio to deprogram 75 million Trump supporters. Next, Portuguese court rules PCR tests unreliable and quarantines unlawful. There are some leaders in countries out there who actually decided not to be bought and paid for. Next, Biden Deputy Chief of Staff wants mandatory buybacks of legal weapons. For all of you who have said over the years, oh, they're not taking my guns away, they're not taking my ability to protect myself and my family, they're not taking my ability to protect my home. Are you still saying it? Next, Pennsylvania is making people wear masks inside their homes. Ohio is making people be home by 10 p.m., and Vermont won't even let you have friends over. Promise. Published articles in the public domain. I know you're shaking your head, some of you, not believing it, but it's true. Next, you cannot leave the house or walk or exercise in Australia. Next, every county sheriff in LA region declines to enforce Gavin Newsom's coronavirus curfew. Why should anybody, whether it be Gavin Newsom or his aunt Nancy Pelosi, all these people, or the New Jersey governor, there's thousands of these examples of these elitists not practicing what they preach. We need practice what you preach laws. I've been calling for it for almost 10 years on the air now. Next, Biden and friends busted partying and singing without masks or social distancing at Joe's elite birthday party bash. Next, I talked to one of the engineers when he cued me in this morning, and he wasn't aware of this, but I saw the document. It was signed by the governor of Minnesota. You guys are going to have to verify if this is true, but Minnesota now fines $1,000 or gives 90 days in jail for those who socialize with somebody who doesn't live in their home. Now, whether it's been put on the books so when they crash down on the American people, they enforce it, we don't know, but the fact that this has been discussed, this has been signed, is very disturbing. And here is the finale for the vaccines. Quote by Bill Gates, I feel very confident the vaccine is safe. This is coming from a admitted eugenicist whose parents created or father created Planned Parenthood for the purpose of keeping the black population at a certain level, from a person who has talked about how we need depopulation in America. Again, Bill Gates, I feel very confident the vaccine is safe. Does anybody want to buy a bridge? Please send me cash. In fact, heck, I don't even know if cash is going to has value anymore. Who knows about anything anymore? Okay, so what I want to do is just talk a little bit about the hoaxes. Let's say, do you really believe, let's say you didn't know who I was, and let's go back in 10 years. Let's go back 10 years before the brainwashing has occurred. I want you to think how, when I say this, how stupid the powers that be think you are. Okay, so let's say 10 years, I went back 10 years in time, and I was convincing you there was 50 genders or 500 genders or 3 genders. Okay, and let's look at some recent news situations that have happened, but go back 10 years regarding the propaganda and the brainwashing that's occurring now. If I told you Epstein killed himself, would you believe me? Or how about if Donald Trump colluded with Russia? Or Hillary Clinton didn't hide or destroy emails and evidence? Or the P dossier was real? Or the Mueller trial was not fake theater? Or some of these Democrat whistleblowers were actually real? Or the central bank system isn't corrupt? Or the Bidens that are not connected to Russia and China? I got an article on that too. which I've mentioned many. Let's say I said Kavanaugh is a gang rapist, that there were weapons of mass destruction. Let's say the DOJ, the FBI, and the CIA didn't sell out Americans. Let's say that Obama didn't sell out Americans and didn't spy on Trump. Let's say conservatives aren't censored. Folks, and then I said Joe Biden won the election. Election integrity is dead, America. America is almost a walking dead stick at this point. If this person who's selected gets into office. Your right, America, basically your right to vote, your birthright of freedom and liberty in the Constitution has been taken from you. Transparency is stolen. It's been redefined. And unfortunately, this is done by mostly and funded by mostly non-elected people. Now, let me ask you something. Let's say I was a marathon racer, and I'm going to come at this from a different angle. Let's say I was like ranked top in the world, and I was picked up, the race started. And you know what? In order to keep this in context properly, because we're coming into a break, I'm going to mention this after the break. But I want you to think about how brainwashed we have been by the Alinsky's, by the Marks, by the Cloward and Pivens, by the Biterman Report. They're following a template, folks. You've been duped. So, folks, what I'm going to do now is I started giving an example right before the break, and I'm going to finish it up here. Let's say I was a marathon runner. Okay, I'm running 26-mile races, and I'm one of the best in the world. And let's say that somebody at the 2-mile mark, one person, multiple people, doesn't matter, sees me being picked up by a car and then dropped off at the 24-mile mark. Let's say I was caught on video. Let's say there was other witnesses. People were willing to sign affidavits. Let's say that there was a press conference, a meeting, and I decided to threaten the people who were saying this. I was doxing their family, going after them. I was creating violence against their children. Let's say that the people who took the videos had a certain software, and we wanted to find out if this software was legit. And the video of me getting in the car and out of the car at the 2 and 24-mile mark, respectively, was real. Well, let's say this company who runs this software didn't show up at the press conference. So the question is, did I really win the race? Would you still have respect for me? Would I have validity? Would I have credibility if all these things happen? You see, what's happening, folks, is that we are paying for theater. Mueller trial, the Russia hoax, the P dossier, lock down everything under fear of COVID for the reset. There's a reason why I mentioned the Biterman Report. You've been taken, you've been used. America, your right to vote and your birthright has been taken from you. Mostly by the wealthiest, non-elected people in the world. This is a planned destruction of the United States. It's done to discredit the people, whether it be through Hollywood or the mainstream media. Heck, you're better. If you want to bet on any type of true, credible, valid information that comes from mainstream media, you're better off agreeing with the opposite of what they say, and you will probably be right more times than not. This is all being orchestrated by the very wealthy who have theirs and don't want you to have yours, even though most of it isn't even earned through nepotism connections. In other words, these people were willing to sell you out and sell out America for their personal gain. We, the people, have to make up the difference. We, the people, need to be the judge and the jury, because most of the lawyers, the judges, the courts, they're rigged, they have turned, they've been blackmailed, they've been paid off, they have sold out the American people and our Constitution, where over 1 million combat soldiers gave their life for us. And we're allowing these people to spit in our face, spit in our drinks, spit in our food, spit in our medicine, and make science, math, healthcare, everything being sold out to the highest bidder for who can do the most nefarious harm to the people. This is our home, and we have to make a choice. We inherited our freedom and our Constitution, which gives us the right to fight for us, to fight for it. Because the people in charge have given up. You know, I look at all these government workers, I look at these poll watchers, I look at the U.S. Postal Service workers, the FBI, the DOJ. It's unbelievable. They really have a new job description, and it's to regulate, control, eliminate freedom, liberty, and the Constitution. They're basically tyrant. They're sellouts. Their new job description is to be a traitor for the purpose of the Great Reset, which is a cover-up of crimes and elite control, to change election rules right before voting. And they call themselves public servants. I hope you realize that you've been taken, America. We'll be right back after this break. We appreciate you being here.
Class, you're listening to USA Prepares, and I'm going to spell the Biterman Report for you so you can look it up. And if you misspell it, you will not find it. The space Biderman Report, 1956, 1956. Biderman. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. I've had a couple comments based on some of the things that Rich Scheben has been saying. So here's some facts. In 1990, this relates to Jumpin' Joe the plagiarist. In 1994, the average gun-owning household had 4.1. We'll call them guns. Okay? That'd be rifle, pistol, shotgun, revolver. 11 years later, 2005, that number was 8.1. So in 2005, the average American household had 8.1, we'll call them guns. Currently, the estimate is that in American hands are between 412 and 660 million guns. Those are in, the villagers' hands. Jumpin' Joe, the plagiarist, has stated that he wants to enforce rules under the National Firearms Act of 1934, which he will charge, his administration will charge a gun tax. If you have a magazine over 10 rounds, either you will sell it to the government, or you will destroy it, or you will pay a $200 fee for it. And I believe that's every year. So for the average gun-owning household in the United States as of 2005, that would be over $1,600 a year in additional tax just for the privilege of keeping the property that you've already bought. When you think of that neighbor who has the Jumpin' Joe, I'm for the plagiarist sign on his front yard, or had it, think about that. Think about what your neighbor just did to you. What is that neighbor going to say? Oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't know. I didn't know that Jumpin' Joe, the plagiarist, was going to do that. They want to have you register your guns, and the first thing that happens is registration. The second thing that happens is confiscation. Jumpin' Joe wants to prevent internet sales of ammunition. He wants to prevent you from owning a modern rifle, like an AR-15, that has the capability of having more than 10 rounds in it. I suggest that you consider, if you don't have a means of protecting yourself, that you consider doing that. And in many states, you do not have to go to the state and say, would it be okay, please, may I have your permission to buy a rifle, a pistol, or a shotgun? In many states, you can buy it privately from an individual, and you don't have to tell anybody. In many states. Look it up. Look it up in your state. Here in the corrupt state of Missouri, we still have the permission of the state to go to a yard sale, a garage sale, and buy a refrigerator, or a used bowling ball, or a pair of pliers, or a rifle, pistol, or shotgun, or ammunition, or a holster, or a scope for the rifle, or targets. Any of those things. You ought to check your corrupt state and see if your state government allows you your right to buy personal property from someone else, like a gun, which is a rifle, pistol, or revolver, or shotgun. Rich Scheben, I just wanted to make that comment, and I have a reading assignment for our class. Class, as we go down the drain, I'd like you to consider buying a book or reading a book called The Long Emergency. The Long Emergency. James Howard Kunstler. It's available on eBay for a little over $4, shipped. It's about how we got into this mess. It's about how cheap energy, cheap fossil fuel, if you want to call it that, was available, and we built our economy, we built our infrastructure, and we're running out. Believe it or not, we are. And what's going to happen, because we are forced, these global systems are going to be forced to change radically very quickly. And you can see it happening. You heard the top of the hour news that GM announced that they are supporting electrical vehicle production. That is going to limit where you can go, unless you have your own recharging station with your own electricity. You're going to have some problems getting from point A to point B. And this is going to unfold like this. Gas stations are going to start disappearing. Automobile replacement parts are going to start disappearing. Heck, why do you need those replacement parts? Since we're not making gas-powered or diesel-powered vehicles anymore. You're going to be forced into driving a little personal transportation device. You know, the equivalent of a smart car. Something like that. You won't be able to take plywood home. You won't be able to take 2x4s home. You won't be able to do those do-it-yourself projects. You'll have to have your washer and dryer delivered. No need to buy a ladder. Certainly can't take it home on a little smart car, right? Think about it. That's where we're headed. And these captains of industry are all lining up to control us. Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vince. question. Since you mentioned Jumpin' Joe, there's additional information that has recently come out regarding troubling connection between Hunter Biden's business associates, remember his the laptop from hell, and the Russian government, as well as millions of dollars transferred from CCP-linked Chinese entity to a Biden business associate who allegedly leveraged his relationship with the former vice president's family, according to the Washington Examiner. These new records confirm the connections between the Biden family and the communist Chinese government, as well as the links between Hunter Biden's business associates and the Russian government, and further support the committee's September 23, 2020 report findings that such relationships created counterintelligence and extortion concerns, wrote the senators in a 5-page report, which included 65 pages of evidence. So for you taxpayers, AKA useful idiots, who have been believing all this Russia-China collusion from President Trump, remember I've said this a gazillion times with a gazillion pieces of evidence. Everything they say you did, they did. Everything that they're convincing the public that you had done, they have already done. Everything is opposite. And that's why I mentioned the Biterman Report. That's why I mentioned Marx and Alinsky and Cloward and Piven and the Frankfurt School. That's how they do it. So I hardly have a lot of time, but I'm just going to mention all the things I've been digging up, all the points to be made in articles regarding election fraud. Now, keep in mind, folks, in the swing states that are in jeopardy right now of any validity regarding our election system, there's more votes than voters. Okay, same ratio of additions to Biden votes and Trump deletions in multiple states. I mean, it's amazing. You got to ask yourself, when you look at this corrupt, unworthy, unreliable process, how can 14 million people in this country not make rent while the top 0.1% has more wealth than the bottom 80% of American adults? This is what I've been doing for 9 years on radio. I've been trying to give you evidence to show that it's not about equality, fairness, tolerance, and diversity. It's about moving the money and redistributing wealth from the bottom 93% to the top few percent. And that's why they're getting away with all this illegal stuff. This is why I talk about laws of access. How can we have all these anomalies, abnormalities, irregularities, and I'm using air quotes, no signatures matching, no transparency, glitches, increased ballot anomalies, dead people voting, double voting, multiple states voting, thousands of voters with the same address, ballot stuffing, poll watchers, Republicans being turned away, unsealed ballots, literally shredder trucks being caught on video, leaving Georgia election headquarters, intimidation, dirty vote rolls. I mean, in some of these districts, I mean, literally double the amount of people who voted that are registered, and their best defense is, come on, man, and all in favor of Joe Biden votes? Come on, people. We're not buying this. Okay, next point. Red wave possible with 2022 midterms. I'm sorry, folks. That's fraud. If we lose this election with all the evidence that have been brought forth, forget about any voting reliability or worthiness or lack of corruption. It's all going to be illegal glitches. It's all going to be conspiracy theories. This is it. From here, it's all downhill if we let this go. Next, Georgia, numerous boxes of perfectly printed off ballots that were 100% Biden. Yes, I said 100%. And I'm shortcutting everything because of time, and that's the way it has to go. We the people have to verify all this. Don't believe a word I say. You have to read and research. Next, Trump finds 3,039 more Georgia votes after 5,300 plus in 2 days were not tabulated from memory cards. Next, remaining $1.3 billion of coronavirus cash to prop up Pennsylvania state budget rather than helping ailing industries. See, they want to get rid of commerce, especially small and medium-sized business. The coronavirus cash, they just use that for legislative purposes, and then the money goes to basically the government workers' pensions, their paychecks, their benefit package, which is on average 20 times higher than the private sector. In other words, they've been bribed in order to vote Democrat, which 90% of them do. The only exception is the people who put their lives into the line. Police, firefighters, and combat soldiers. Those are the exceptions. Next, reporter Victor J. 8 of 9 ballots went through no signature verification, which has been built up as this infallible security measure had an 89% failure rate. Next, Dominion Voting Systems Thursday night abruptly backed out of attending a fact-finding hearing that was set for Friday morning with the Pennsylvania House state government. The Dominion backed out.
Class, today is Tuesday. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Gwyneth will be with me, live from Australia. Thursday, Rich and I will be back. That's Thanksgiving. And what we normally do is check with our engineer. Jason plans to be at GCN Engineering on Thursday, Thanksgiving anyway. So because he's going to be there, we'll be there. Now, normally what we do is we leave it up to the engineer. If the engineer has family plans and to spend the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, etc., with family, and if the engineer is going to be off, then we do not want to impose. So we will do a rerun. But Jason will be live with us on Thursday. He planned on being at GCN, so we'll be live on Thursday. Friday, it's just me. Tips from the book. And my question to you, class, is, has USA Prepares helped you in any way at all? If so, I'd love to hear it, because I don't know how much I've accomplished. I don't think very much. So if you have been helped by USA Prepares, I'd love to hear about it. And if you haven't, you may call in as well. And that telephone number on Friday and Thursday is 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Back to Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vince. Okay, I'm just going to go on with more evidence of voter fraud. The State Government Committee Chair Seth Grove said regarding Pennsylvania, today I am saddened, I'm reading his quote, to report to the taxpayers of Pennsylvania, and the 1.3 million voters who trusted Dominion voting system with their ballots, that Dominion voting systems has hung you out to dry and slapped you in the face because they just left. They didn't come. It's an admission to guilt is what it is. Next, there are hundreds of irregularities on videos like the one from the New York Times feeds from Pennsylvania on November 4th, particularly vote ratios which are being transferred from random sets of seized precincts throughout the day. I'm just going to have to shortcut my shortcuts because I'm running out of time. Now, regarding Dominion equipment, folks, there's at least 10 ways to hack the Dominion equipment. It's very easy to do. And there's 5 counties, basically, that use what's called a drop and roll technique, okay? And it was basically the counties that include Atlanta, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Phoenix. So what they did, in short, is they stopped counting to see how many votes they needed to drop regarding the ballots to create a lead. And then a new batch was put in to fix or roll a certain number via software to keep the lead up. So this software, the so-called people who know something about this and the whistleblowers, they're saying our vote could have been literally fixed and fraud since 2012. And just so you know, there's 29 states using this software. That should get your blood boiling. Next, during a particular period of time, while a precinct is selected, it gives Trump an exact number of votes and gives Biden a minimum number of votes, and then splits the small remainder to the third party or to Biden, and that's why Joe J. got a lot of extra votes as the Libertarian Party, because they took a lot of those Trump votes and put them there. Next, legal team has evidence of 7 million votes stolen from Donald Trump. 10 million illegal votes cast for Biden, several million votes cast by dead people, photos of the checks proving people were paid, and many witnesses today are needing federal witness protection. Next, I wish we can talk about this in detail. I don't have time. I apologize. Next, from Nevada's own election site, total ballots cast over 1.3 million. Total presidential election votes, 1.4 and change million. That means there are almost 78,000 more votes in the presidential election than are casted ballots in Nevada. And Biden only has a 33,000 margin lead currently. Folks, you've been taken. You've been duped. You've been conned. You've been played. And I'm going to come back with more evidence after this break.
Yeah, and the sports coverage seems to increasing, like what you just heard in the sports news, just at the bottom of the hour. And they might as well have said, well, we're doing a great job and we could do better. Well, we'll continue our efforts to work with our strengths and our weaknesses, and we are confident that we are confident. They might as well have just said that. Rich, even back to you.
Well, thank you, Vince. And basically, that's what was the longest part of the commercial or the news, was the football thing. Bread and circus, folks. Bread and circus, part of the distractions and the diversions. Now, when they talked about the GSA chief certifying the elections, what they didn't tell you is that the GSA chief, Emily Murphy, had threats to her life, her family, and her pets. And I read the article, and I have it right in front of me. That's right. See, this is what they don't tell you. And by the way, Gateway Pundit, InfoWars, they have many, many video testimony and signed affidavits of voter and election fraud. You have been taken. You are in the middle of having your country and your right and your vote and your birthright taken from you right now, lifetime history. Next, a national security source confirmed to me that a piece of hardware had been secured from Germany. Sidney Powell confirms the U.S. military seized skill services in Germany. Sidney Powell adds she has reasonable concern or certain both John James and Doug Collins actually won their respective races but were cheated out of their seats too. Now we're hoping that the good guys did get these servers and not the bad guys. And I haven't gotten 100% confirmation, but who's good and who's bad? Is it the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, people who are paid by us, taxpayers? Please. Traitors. Next, I feel the need to point out again that our voting system is vulnerable to attack. Citizens of 13 states will be voting in the midterms on insecure, obsolete, hackable, paperless voting machines that can be recounted. You know who that quote is from? Alyssa Milano. Well, we need to have voter ID with paper trackable receipts. We need to null and void this whole election. We need to take 1 month. We can easily do it. Take 1 month for everybody to prove that they're citizens. They get voter IDs, and then we re-vote again, because this whole system, this makes America a big fraud. Next, Georgia bombshell analysis. Biden takes a minimum of 98% of almost 24,000 votes. Oh, by the way, did you hear about the shredder trucks leaving the voter headquarters? Oh, yeah, I mentioned that already. 70% of Wayne County, Detroit, there were phantom voters. There were more votes than registered voters. And this is a swing state phenomenon. Watch, and by the way, for those of you who haven't watched the training video on voter fraud on how to steal the Detroit, Michigan, it was shown to ballot counters. I am not kidding you. There's a training video, and I think I've mentioned this before, but you have to listen to it. You have to watch it. It's unbelievable. In fact, I think it's just audio. Next, in Pennsylvania, 23 mail-in ballots have a return date earlier than the date set. Another 35,000 were returned the same day, and they were sent, and 51,000 were returned a day after they were set. Next, City of Detroit workers swear she witnessed thousands of ballots being falsified. Of all the sworn statements to date, career civil servant Jesse Jacob of Detroit provided the most sweeping claim of election fraud. She, and by the way, there's many hundreds of these affidavits now, personally witnessed and in some cases was instructed to backdate thousands of absentee ballots the day after the election to make them appear legal, even though they were not qualified voter file and had not arrived by the deadline. And she estimates this was done to thousands of ballots in a sworn statement. That means she's putting her life on the line to go to prison under perjury. Next, Dominion voting systems. Dominion caught red-handed giving blocks of votes to Biden in different precincts, the same number, same proportion, at exact same time in ratios, sometimes as high as 104 to 3, many times. Next, China Daily, controlled by the Chinese Communist Party propaganda department. Wall Street Journal, $85,000 received from China. LA Times, $340,000. And other U.S. papers for even advertising campaigns in the millions between May and October 2020. Next, thousands of ballots listed as P.O. boxes, but they insert a suite, apartment, or unit number to give the appearance of physical address as required by law. Also, rental boxes at UPS and FedEx locations and even private mailbox stores disguising the box numbers the same way. I estimate the number of ballots that were requested by someone other than the registered Republican or requested and returned but not counted range between 90 and 98,000, says Stephen Miller, professor at Princeton and Yale, mathematician. Next, Sidney Powell just released an article detailing how Dominion's patent and proprietary code were given to a Chinese bank as collateral. There's no fraud here, folks. Let's just inaugurate Joe Biden. There's no fraud here. This is totally legal. Next, mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. That was sarcasm, by the way. Mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania were rejected for technical errors at a suspiciously low rate in some key counties. Don't worry about the election. President Trump's not going to win. I made effing sure that, says Dr. Eric Coomer, VP of U.S. Engineering for U.S. Dominion Voting. Folks, you've been scammed. Next, Sidney Powell. Trump had at least 80 million votes. I bet he had 100 million votes from the evidence just that I've uncovered over the last few weeks. Next, Crazy Town. Cash floods in Georgia from politicians, from celebrities, from Zuckerbergs. It's unbelievable. We are literally a banana republic, folks. I'm not kidding you. Tape a banana with duct tape onto your American flag. We are here. Next, about 73% of the Biden vote margin gain in Pennsylvania from areas given $18 million by Zuckerberg. There we go. Funded as the Safe Election Project. Everything that they say, like the Patriot Act, is the opposite. Everything. Next, more than double the vote margin is from illegal ballots. You can't even make this stuff up. Next, In sworn statement, prominent mathematician flags 100,000 Pennsylvania ballots. Next. Trump won 95% of bellwether counties, making Biden win statistically improbable. Next. Treason. Governor, this is disturbing, folks. Governor Kemp of Georgia and Newsom of California was bought off by Communist China in COVID supply kickback and money laundering scheme. Why do you think Governor Kemp just changed his mind on signature verification? I think he's being looked at and for possible arrest. Next, how Pennsylvania was stolen. Secret spreadsheet has just emerged that the Democrat Party does not want you to see. Next, 30% of Democrats believe election was stolen from Trump and 87% from the Republican Party. From what I understand, and the Democrats who are coming to me, it's a lot higher than 30% because there's so much evidence, and they feel our country's going to go down because of the agenda that's behind all this. And if all these Dominion execs have nothing to hide, why are they hiding from the people and lawyering up? That's called admission to guilt. Next, up to 25,000 ballots simultaneously. This is Twilight Zone stuff. Up to 25,000 mail-in ballots simultaneously requested by nursing home residents in Pennsylvania. Killing these poor people wasn't enough. They're using their names for false ballots. Next, Giuliani says votes from 28 states were sent to Germany and Spain to be fraudulently rigged by Smartmatic. Next, largest number of cluster votes in Wayne County came from, you're going to love this, folks, so you're sitting down, from psychiatric hospitals for patients with severe mental illness. They're digging up names from everywhere. This is fraud. This is fraud. This is fraud. Next, Sidney Powell says the Republican Governor Kemp of Georgia was paid to use Dominion voting machines. We just said that. This is from somebody else now. Next, Bill Gates' Microsoft designed election fraud software used by Dominion. Next, Bill Gates, the guy who wants to reduce population and says his vaccines are safe. That guy. Next, Michigan AG calls for criminal charges against GOP certifiers who won't fall in line. My gosh, Octombe, show me your papers. This is Nazi stuff. Next, 3 million dead voted, 7 million votes stolen from Donald J. Trump, says Sidney Powell. Next, Giuliani describes a Democrat whistleblower and Michigan back in play. Next, equipment found dumped on roadside in Georgia from a mostly Republican county. I mean, I think I've given every scenario possible of voter fraud over the past few weeks. I can't come up with anything anymore. And this is real stuff. Next, 2 women are following a shredder truck that just left Georgia election headquarters. I mentioned this. It's on video. A shredder truck is leaving election headquarters. Folks, if we give Joe Biden the presidency, America will fall. Will fall. I'm telling you right now. Next, federal lawsuit seeks to throw out 1.2 million flawed ballots in 3 Michigan counties guilty of voter fraud. And they're saying there's no evidence. Here's a good one. Absentee ballots with impossible return dates. I think I've gone over all this stuff. 15 counties allowed ballot curing. 14 did not in Pennsylvania. Folks, you can't have different rules, laws, and accountabilities based on different groups, never mind different counties in the same state. Next, RNC chair says Detroit election worker blows whistle on cheating operation. All election workers were reportedly told to backdate ballots. Backdate. Next, Dominion CEO says our machines rely on Chinese parts and screened interface download to chip level. People, we don't have an election. We have a Banana Republic theater.
Rich, you mentioned the Nazis, and on November 18th, the German parliament passed a law. It's called the Infection Protection Act. And in Germany, this is formally granting the government the authority to issue whatever edicts it wants under the illusion of protecting public health. So that means that in Germany, effective now, they can order lockdowns, curfews, they can ban demonstrations, they can raid homes and businesses, they can ban travel, they can order you to wear a mask, they can arrest people who they consider are dissidents, and they can harass people. And it's all legitimate because it is now passed as the Infection Protection Act. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is you mentioned Nazi Germany, and this is now law in Germany. So could it happen here? Could it spread like a disease? Absolutely. Absolutely. So the stumblebum wants to confiscate your guns, and he wants to tax you first. And keep that in mind. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when they come for you? Rich?
Well, and keep in mind, that's one of the reasons why Trump said that Big Pharma was purposely delaying the coronavirus vaccine until after the election, because they knew that they were going to select and illegally, fraudulently put Joe Biden in as the presidency. Okay, you got to remember the Geneva Convention, and the Nuremberg Code. This is violating, when you're doing all these behaviors, especially injecting nanotechnology into people for the purpose of depopulation. This is against the Geneva Convention and the Nuremberg Code. We have to remember that. Okay, so I'm going to start. I'm running out of time here. I'm going to mention a few more articles before I'm done. Putin says he's not ready to recognize Biden as U.S. president. We have more integrity in Vladimir Putin, more common sense and logic than we do in the Democrat Party. How sad is that? Next, I want to remind people of a 2008 flashback when Barack Obama won his Senate seat by tossing ballots without matching signatures. I hope somebody in the White House is listening to this. Next, selling citizenship for profit. It's a scam tied to Jill Biden. Oh, yeah, let's put these people in the White House. Next, Science and Twitter says it will make Biden POTUS regardless of election outcome. Regardless of election outcome. This was all planned, all for show, all scripted. Next, House Dem blocks small business aid for fourth time because they don't want to give prosperity to the little people. They want you to be serfs, so you can't combat their religion, their rules, their fake laws. It's an aristocracy-serfdom relationship. Very little left-right paradigm. Next, blatant attempt to kill Parler because they say it's dangerous for minors. No, it's not. It's because Parler they don't want free speech. And folks, for you in Parler, I've never done Twitter or Facebook or any of that stuff. I just don't have time. But I'll be honest with you. Watch for threats. Okay, watch for threats from the left to the right, blaming patriots for, civil war, or we're going to kill this person, we're going to kill that. That's what the left does. They go on places, on venues like Parler, so they can discredit them. Now, the fascist Facebook fact check is all to condition, groom, and cultivate and control your life. Their fact checkers are third-party contract groups made to discredit truth. And these third-party contract groups even write their own articles for references so they can give fake credibility. Be aware of all this. It's all part of the propaganda. Next, man who turned over Hunter Biden's laptop to the FBI forced to close his shop because of threats. Next, Trump lawyer placed under U.S. Marshal protection because he's being threatened. Next, the ACLU and the college professors are encouraging book burnings. They've been doing this for a long time, folks. Book burnings because this is Nazi Germany stuff. So when they call a Trump a Nazi, it's the opposite. Everything they're doing, I've gone over this a million times with many different behaviors. Next, Facebook bans all Defense of Rittenhouse because they don't want you to have guns. They don't want you to protect yourself. Vince, all these threats is very disturbing. Very, very scary. Your final thoughts. Thanks for letting me have all this time.
Well, my final thought is just another threat. Airbag recall. And this could affect you. Look up and see if your vehicle has an airbag recall. At least 7 million General Motors vehicles are affected. Nitroglycerine is used in airbags. No kidding. And it makes a hand grenade out of your steering wheel. Look up your vehicle.